Hello and welcome. I hope everything's all right. I hope everything sounds good, and I hope it's not doing the little pulsy thing, which is why I look a little luminous, because if I put the main lights on, it kind of doesn't work. And yet this is my main light, and I have moved the room around. So I decided that I fancied turning so I could actually see out into my garden to the left, and before the screens are in the way. And I made the table a little smaller, and it just feels so much bigger in here, but I really just wanted to see some plants and stuff on the left. So, hey, yes, you now get to view stuff behind me instead of the picture wall. So, oh wow, so everyone can hear me? 50 to 60 flicker? Hopefully not. Are you getting flickering? Because I've kind of got this light on instead of the main light. And I don't know why. I think it's actually the LEDs in this are flickering, but I don't know why they flicker. Right, and welcome Shergel. Good to have you here, and thanks for no flicker. This is mains LEDs on a different circuit to the online, obviously. The ones up here. He's in low res. Maybe that's why. Hi Mac, who's arrived as well. Jaw21. Ooh, you're all here today. Tamsin, if we're playing long words game, she's going to go with floxinacification. I might have missed a syllable or two out of that. So this week, we're looking at new stuff. But first, I put a little pin at the top of Ben from Second Dynasty's Kickstarter that goes live on the 14th. And today's the 10th, so that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. He has been a real supporter for me, and I only do this job because Ben encouraged me. That's why I do 3D print design, really. When I wasn't sure what to do, he encouraged me. So if you could, if you're into space stations, or in this case, it's a colony, though I feel it's got a very space stationy feel to it, then go on over and check it out. And my Kickstarter is going to be, my next one's going to be really complementary to his, but I don't want to put anything up till his going live because I'm using his system and with walls and things, and I want his to kind of go live first, and then hopefully when he's gone live, mine will come out in September sometime. So anyway, go check that out. And whilst I remember, having moved the room around, everything has just flopped. I think I need to tighten the mic up a bit because it keeps kind of blurting down. And while I'm on it, I need to thank my mods. So thanks to Digger, Timber if he's snuck on, and Norm, who turn up every week and stop the spam guys. Though I see Norm was spamming further up, trying to get more crowns, and it didn't succeed. Oh, and it's a Frontier, Doug says. Yes, he reminds me. It's a Frontier, not a Kickstarter. But I have put the right link on. The difference between Frontiers and Kickstarters is very much Frontiers are my mini factory run. And you get the files as soon as you've paid for them, at least the beginning files. Stretch goals might come later. So it's a slightly different thing. I think it's good for a creator because I get a good percentage of dropouts every time. So I'll maybe get £200-300 worth of dropouts, depending who dropped out on my Kickstarters and how big it was. Obviously, the bigger the Kickstarter, the more money you lose. Whereas on a Frontier, they've already paid and got the stuff. So that is good. And we're on long word game. So it's floxinacification indicates no value to long words. Okay. I think we should time Norm out, Digger, just so you don't lose your #1 crown, because I know how proud you are of that. Shergel says Frontiers are more fulfilling. I think it's interesting though, because I'm not sure whether Frontiers have as much reach as a Kickstarter. So I'm not sure how they compare money-wise. And of course you can't release the same thing onto both of them and have the same impact, because they have a lot of the same sort of crossover. But yeah, his Gridforge one, which was December last year, and did really well for them. So there we go. And they're all laughing at Norm, who is desperately trying to get a crown, and he gets stuck at #3. Yeah. Though I just read up there and it said no audio and video. Beautiful. Oh, okay. And Ed asked, did I have, did I have it previously? Yeah, this main light flickers for some reason. Doug doesn't think Norm is any threat to Digger's crown, and he's at number 2. And Tamsin's turned her crowns off. Flocky, knocky, nihili-pillification. Okay, flocky, knocky, nihili-pillification. Okay, I could do that. Shergel says Kickstarters have a broader potential audience, though. Yeah, they do. And you do get a wider sort of marketing perhaps off it. I think if you're a small studio on My Mini Factory, you don't get as much reach. But anyway, we'll see. Shergel says, heck with the crowns, who earns the title of Princess Leia? Or Princess Leia? Well, I think that's a toss-up between you and Doug for all of your fancy print testing multicoloured prints. So I have a Outbound Station, which is my next Kickstarter, currently going. I think I was going to do an engineering bay and a hangar bay and a cargo area, but then Ben did those for his Kickstarter, the Frontier, that's starting in 4 days. I didn't want to compete with him. I wanted to complement him. So I've moved on to doing the habitation ring, which means that I've more or less started again with just the corridor. So I've done hydroponics, a sensor room, and I'm working on the mess hall at the moment. So that's where we are at the moment. And there's windows and doors and all that kind of stuff. But yeah. So Doug has said that Shergel can be the Princess Shergel, but he doesn't want to see a swimsuit. But it's a princess. So I think it's about who has the most success printing. I have to get the cinnamon bun headphones. Yeah, you guys could be like Leia if you wanted. Ed, is it possible it was 50 to 60 flicker? The National Grid gives you electricity at 50 hertz. If you film at 60, it can flicker. So if you stream film at 50, that might fix the flicker. Well, let's put it this way. It's on automatic, so I'm not picking what it's streaming at. It's set by either OBS, which I've never changed, or YouTube, which I've never changed. When I do my own recording for videos for YouTube, I do them all at 25 frames, which is exactly half 50. And I record on my camera at 1/50th, because that again works with the 50s. But I have no idea. I have no idea what OBS, my streaming software, and YouTube do between them. But the truth hurts, but the cycle continues. Oh, Shergel, you have the best. Norm says, no, it was that overhead light before. Yeah. So is it Princess Leia or Princess Leia? One spelled Princess Leia and the other spelled Princess Leia. Yeah, Shergel has many more. I don't actually know how many printers Shergel's got. I find after a while, no matter how many you've got, you still probably only use 2. The responses apparently. Printers to infinity and beyond. So Ed, yes, that's perfect for your recording. It will be a setting in OBS. I'll see if I can find it on mine. That's great, thanks Ed. And then I can change it on mine. There is a settings, but I won't do it at the moment. Princess. Okay, so this week, after all of that, we're actually going to be talking about being new at a hobby. Any hobby really, because all hobbies have the same hurdle of being new at it. I started a newish hobby. It went along the lines of, I don't want a pig dog mess up, so I don't want a dog. And my house isn't cat safe because I've got ornaments everywhere and noxious chemicals, and a cat would just destroy stuff. So I went with fish. So anyway, I've got an aquarium with no fish in, because apparently when you start an aquarium, you don't put fish in them, you let them settle for a bit. But going down this alley, and I will do an underwater diorama. It's actually going to have a bongo in it, a Gungan submarine, for those of you who aren't quite as into Star Wars as I am. I have this Star Wars crossword book, which I bought for my holiday and didn't do on holiday, so I'm doing it now. I can proudly say that I managed to get all of the Revenge of the Sith without even having to look. And there's some really long quotes you have to know, and what was Padme's last word, and all these sorts of things. And I was really proud. I knew everything. And on the Phantom Menace, I was a bit stuck on what the name of the big fish was. OP is the answer. And there was like maybe one other name I struggled on a bit. Oh, Tarples. I couldn't remember the general's name, but they said it was captain, and I thought he was a general, so I was a little confused. And then on the other middle Attack of the Clones, I was there apart from 2. I couldn't remember the name of the club they go to in Coruscant. So anyway, I wasn't as good on the originals, and I suck at the sequels, but it made me realise just how much Star Wars trivia I know. So there we go. So back to chat. Princess Leia said, Ed. Doug, I've lost track too, but I've only got 1. Yeah, Doug, 1 is enough for most people. Printless Leia says, Ed. So Ravenson Express, and what is with Princess Vespa from Spaceballs? I don't know, I've never seen Spaceballs. A cat would be a disaster. Yeah, I think just looking around this room, and this is not the only room I've got like that, and my lounge has got the big ones on the floor because I ran out of space. Yeah, goober fish. That is easy to remember, Shergle. Goober fish is easy to remember, but that wasn't the sad answer because I was going, big goober fish, goober, and then it was like, no, it isn't that one. So Ed says, oh yeah, a cat would contaminate itself really quickly in my house. I wouldn't want it to live, suffer like that. Yeah, I don't think it'd be fair on the cat. We had a cat we inherited from my uncle, which lived at my mum's. And bless her, she was literally cat sat on mat. She'd got arthritis. She was 15 when we got her. She couldn't do anything. It was really, she would have been the perfect cat. But even that, I've just got stuff at floor level everywhere. Down here, there are dioramas at floor level. Okay, Mr. Cat Billy Bob died last week on Wednesday afternoon. Oh yes, Mac put some photos on Discord of his cat. And he looked gorgeous. He did look really gorgeous, and I can understand that you miss him. We really missed our Spitfire when she went. We only had her for 5 or 6 years. She was very old, but they're really a part of your family, so I do understand that totally. Shergle, the big one is the Sando Aqua Monster, and it is a monster. It has arms and legs. Had to look it up. Yes, I guessed the aqua bit of it. I think on that one. Doug says, as Shergle previously said, cats are proof that the world is not flat. Okay. That's true. A cat, it is a heart on 4 paws. Very true. Do you know, I was sitting here, and there are loads of cats in my garden. They come in to eat the birds and drink the water that's in the fountain at the top. It's really easy. It's just like got a little tray for them to drink out of. And I just saw a black cat for the first time ever, and it came and looked at me, and I could see it wanted to come in, but it knew there was glass there, so I'm looking at the cat. The cat's looking at me. Nothing happened because I wasn't going up and letting it in 2 minutes before the live stream started. So yeah, and loads of people are saying sorry to Mac because it is hard. Doug says, if the world was flat, cats would have pushed everything off the edge by now. Very true. And you both said it. Shergle repeated it. Yeah, Digger repeats it. Oh, Digger's lost his #1 crown. Okay, we won't just talk about crowns. So, found it. Settings, video. Video. Common. Mine is set to 25 PAL. So it's already set to 25 PAL. So I don't know why it's flickering. I actually think one of these LEDs is dying. Might be part of the reason. But yeah, there we go. Who's usurped the #1 crown though? Ravenson. Oh, it's because he's talking about his cat. You see, cats rule. As Ed said, the cat pushed the #1 crown off the edge. Right, I actually did, Regicide, I've actually done a PowerPoint presentation, but when I put this up, I struggled to see chat. So I'm going to do a slide or two and then have to come back to chat. But I wanted to talk about new. So why am I talking about new? Well, I did this aquarium, and it struck me how hard it is to pick a hobby up in the internet era. It is so hard to do in the internet era. I think it's far harder in some ways than when I started doing model railways and you had to go visit people, friends, clubs, shows, or get books or magazines. There was also online forum, but they were for the dedicated. So you didn't get a lot of like quippy answers back and forth like you do on social media. And the reason is, I mean, some of you may or may not have aquariums, and I'm not going to make this a 2 hours on aquariums. Trust me, they're not going to feature much other than I did everything you'd expect. I looked on the internet, I watched hundreds of YouTube videos, I actually bought Practical Fish Keeping, which was really boring. And I did loads of research, I bought a book, you know, I looked, and then I went to a shop that specialises in planted aquariums, which is what I want, because the plants excite me almost more than the fish. But in the end, I found a few fish that I wanted, and so I've got a 60 litre, 40 cube nano tank. And it's got black lava rock in it, and some black spider wood, and a piece of some other wood that wasn't spider wood, but is also dark. And it's got green plants in it, loads of green plants. And then you get to that, oh, I need to cycle it. How long before I can put fish in? And it's like an internet black hole, because everybody has an opinion, everybody's right in their own eyes, and you've already got your plants in, so you can't do 90% of the methods. But actually, I just in the end followed the method that the shop told me, which was to follow the soil that I bought. It's some Denelay aqua soil, and they said change your water this often, do this much and this. So that's what I've been doing. And they said no fish before 3 weeks. So go to the fish shop just to look at them, you know, went over there, Maidenhead Aquatics local to us, and he's like, oh, you can put your fish in on Friday. And this is a week after I'd done it. And you're like, oh, that's interesting, because that seems like really early. You know, well, my tank have cycled, and my ammonia was still at 2 parts per million at that point, and it's now down about the right amount. But then is that not kickstarting my cycle? It all becomes a minefield, and you just get so confused because the internet is full of experts and they all know exactly what they're talking about. And it got me thinking about how hard it is to be new in a hobby with the internet era. So I wanted to talk about being new, a little bit about my journey, because I have this set of slides that I found when I was doing this, so that went in there. And then a little bit about how you cope with the whole internet side of things, as well as just chatting with you guys, which is half the fun of being here, is to get to chat to you guys. So, and Shergel says, there used to be model shops with gorgeous wargaming in the back that would help with almost everything. Grognard, sorry, wargaming. Obviously I thought it should be gorgeous. Thing I hate about screens is I've got varifocals, and just then nothing, it's never quite in focus. So I've actually got I'm going to do it again. I've actually got the sizing on this up to like 20 times size so I can read it when it's blurry. Right, so I've done this PowerPoint presentation. Here we go. Now I just need to find, here we go, and then go back to here and see. Right, okay. There we go. Right, hopefully when I click, this will go through. Yes. So, how to be new. Right. Let's just check to see if that comes through. Is it coming? Oh, yes it is. Right. So I just thought we'd talk a little bit about how do you learn? How do you learn how to do something? Well, I just listed all the things that I did. Oh, and I've put myself over the top. Hang on, this involves me going back to OBS and moving myself to the other side, and then moving the logo to that side, perhaps, and then moving this to this side, and then going back here. Right, okay. So, how do you actually find out what to do? I think the number one way, and please guys, I can see chat, so if you've got any ideas I've missed, things you found really helpful, then pop them in chat for people. But I think one of the best way is YouTube videos. You know, you really can go and see it practically. You can see physically how they do things. Having said that, I like to see things written down sometimes. So when I go through and I just want to know how to do something really simple, and they insist that I can, you know, the top searches are like all videos. And I'm like, I just want to see this written down. I don't want it on a video. So I get some people prefer to see it written. I'm definitely one of those people. But YouTube videos can be really useful when it's a really visual thing that they're doing, like when they're trying to explain how to do scenery sometimes. And they're also quite fun. There's a lot more styles of video, so you can find somebody that is engaging and fun and you enjoy listening to. And I've just realised I've got a giant subscription thing over my face, so let me just move that to there. And you can, maybe pick someone who is just the way you engage with. But Doug says he's always preferred written versions to YouTube videos, and I get that 100%. So if you like listening, there are some podcasts. Now obviously it's hard to learn modelling, but I have listened to modelling podcasts. I've listened to 3D printing podcasts. Sometimes they're also on YouTube. I actually prefer not seeing people just talk. I'd rather just put them on in the background and not have them talking. But if they're showing loads of pictures, that can be useful. But when I started off, it was mostly online articles and forums, books and magazines, shows and conventions, and other people's layouts and dioramas and friends. And I've listed all those there. You look at it, there's a long way of looking at things. Nowadays, there's also social media. Now, the biggest problem in all this, how good are the people who are giving you advice? If you're reading an online article, generally somebody has bothered to put photos on and to show their work. And if it's a forum, quite often it's a whip. So you can see, like whip posting, so you can see what they're posting along the way and you can see if you like it. It's a bit like a YouTube video. You can fast forward to the end result, see if you like what they've done, and then go back and do it. Nothing frustrates me more than watching a video and looking at the end result and going, that really sucks. I wouldn't have watched this video if I'd known it was going to look like that at the end, because that looks nothing like what I want mine to look like. It's either, just not the right style, or it's not the right, it doesn't look like and I suppose you're looking at snow, it just looks like icy snow and you want yours to look like fluffy snow. There's all sorts of reasons why it may not be what you want. So it can be a bit of a journey. So there's definitely a long list of things that I've used. And friends, I think my biggest problem nowadays is quite often you do stuff on your own. I mean, I had a friend come at the weekend and she says, I started to explain about the aquarium. And she was like, I kept fish for 10 years. I probably know more about it than you do. And of course, my first thought is, did you do planted? Did you do this? Did you do that? And what happens is there's actually fashions in things. And so the way you did them 10, 15 years ago, people will now tell you is the wrong way. I mean, it worked 10, 15 years ago. And I think with fish, they haven't evolved that quickly, so it's likely to be just as good. It's quite hard to work out who to follow. Is that technique they're giving you going to work? And YouTube videos or online articles or books or magazines, at least books and magazines normally have someone editing who will check that it looks reasonable. If you go to a show or a convention, you can see the final result. In fact, when you wander around the NEC at one of the big shows, you go to the National Train Show, whatever it is, you go to Scale Model World or up to the IPMS meets, all sorts of different types of modelling. But when you go and look at them, you have the advantage that you can go look and see something you want to know how to do and normally chat to the person who did it. And they can explain it to you. They can tell you where the hiccups were. It's absolutely brilliant. But my biggest problem with anything looking online is you have to know the right question before you can find the answer. We've all done it. You're searching for that thing, that little widget online, and you can't think what it's called. And you take about 20 search results before you realise it's called a bulkhead clip. And you realise that actually you've been searching and searching and searching, and the thing you wanted was called this. But you knew what it was, you knew what it did, you just didn't know what it was called. And I find that a nightmare sometimes. So it can be really, really difficult to ask the right question. When I was learning model railways, I found friends coming in and telling me, or asking me questions. So what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that? Made me think things that I'd never even thought about asking. And that is the problem with self-directed learning by people who are new. They don't know what questions to ask. So they don't know what answers they're looking for. And that's where the internet sometimes steps in and makes it worse. Let's go look at chat. So Shergel says his hobby journey is a bit of a Rube Goldberg contraption of one subject leading into the rabbit hole of the next. I feel like I've done that a lot, and I like my rabbit holes, so I'm quite happy to dive down them. Doug says the worst when the video doesn't give you bad advice because they don't understand the subject. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there who don't always. Someone wrote to me about static grass and said that won't work because X, Y, and Z. And I looked at it and I thought, what you are saying is physically flawed. I'm sure the charges are the other way around. And I thought a long time about responding to them because normally if someone criticises it, I don't generally respond, and we'll get more onto that later. But because he said something factually incorrect, I went back eventually and said, actually, it's the other way round. And he was saying everything would stand upright, going to the sky almost, attracted in the direction of the grounding peg, which actually doesn't really happen. They jostle each other and go away from each other. And the problem with the embankment was they were standing out at 90 degrees to the embankment that they were on, because they're all standing as far away from, and I wanted them to actually go upright because grass grows in the direction of gravity, not out sideways at 90 degrees. And yeah, it is sometimes, but he came up and put a comment on and criticised, and I always didn't answer, but in the end I did because he was wrong. But it made me have to remember what I'd put, because it'd been a while since I'd written the book. I'd researched it all for the book, and I'm like, I'm sure the ground is negative on the ground, and the ground is neutral, so it's going to do whatever. And then they're positive coming out, and then I had to go and look and see what it was. So yeah, anyway, it is one of those things that people don't always understand, and they will write comments, and you have to make sure you know whether you're right or not before you respond. Grodnard, according to Shergel, is French for grumbler. But it's used in the wargaming communities from Napoleon's comments on grumblers of the old guard. Yeah, I can imagine the back of some of the stores back in the day. So yeah. Brewski, welcome, says YouTube videos are great, but physically working with the medium, you'll catch little items that can only be experienced by trying. Yep, and I haven't got to that very point, but that is the crux of it all, isn't it? Doug is gives rather than doesn't give. Yes, I actually thought that's what you meant, Doug. Yeah. So Digger, yeah, it's good to be able to talk to the creator of a piece you like. I think it's invaluable, especially if it's a little bit different, and so it's not in the normal run of things. So you're like, I can't just go and see that online because it's not the normal way people do things. Jericho said, ChatGPT is really good at finding the real names for things if you're good at describing. Yeah, my problem is I don't ever use AI. As somebody whose job it wants to take, it's a bit like, I'm not sure about the environmental thing on it. There's so many reasons. I've used it occasionally, so I'm not being like, I'm being a little hypocritical. I think I use it to write my marketing sometimes because I cannot do marketing speak. But that's about it. And but I tell you what I do like, Google's little summary of things now, which is an AI, and their Google Lens. If you have a photo of something, it will tell you what it is. It's so helpful, especially with plants. But as Ed says, you always need the terminology to search what you need to know. And Ed says, that won't work because this reason. Sorry, it moved up at that point. Post on a comment of the thing literally working. Yeah, quite true. Brewski says, I always start with a small project. You're robbing the rest of my slides. Don't give all the secrets away. But yeah, good point. And then Doug says, the worst thing about the internet is all those people who are wrong, who won't admit that I am right. Very true. Ed says, model railway, that's why I'm here. Yeah, well, that's a good reason to be here. So Max Musterman says, what I did with every hobby of mine is finding YouTube channels about the subjects I like and trust, and Reddit, posting things and asking specific things on Reddit. Yeah, I kind of assume that's a forum. I like looking on Reddit. I never actually post on it, but it does have some good stuff. The trouble is, if I look for aquariums, there are people who say, what you're doing now will kill all your fish, stop doing it. And what I see is people go to a fish store, they buy an aquarium with fish, they take it home, they set it up, they put the fish in it, they go online and say, woohoo, look at my lovely new fish tank. And people pile onto them and say, you'll kill your fish. Oh, that's awful. How could you do that? And 99% of the time, they don't kill their fish. But people love to pile on. And, I see that on Reddit and other places. Telling them they're going to kill their fish. Then they have all this like, I'm doing it wrong, I'm doing it wrong. The truth is they just need to be perhaps more careful than those that didn't do it that way. And it's probably not advised for a beginner. But the fish stores don't necessarily know what they're talking about. And then going online and being told that you've got it wrong, you've got it wrong. There is so much conflicting advice online. It is really hard to work anything out. It says that Google summary is usually inaccurate. Oh, definitely, but it always has the link that you can click on to go and look at what they're actually saying. Google Translate with camera on signage is amazing. Another good thing for Google on Translate with camera, so you can go into Google with your camera and it will translate foreign languages. If ever you're building a Japanese model kit and all the instructions are in Japanese, generally there's not a lot of instructions, because they're very good at making the pictorial way of it working and pointing it all out pictorially, like an IKEA kind of instructions. But all the painting and the stuff at the beginning, all of that is in Japanese normally. It's not always in English. It is brilliant for doing that. I've been using it for years to sort that. Oh, and Digger, oh bless, thank you Digger. I really should remember to do that, but I can only pin one message and I chose to do Ben's. Kathy's book. So I wrote a book on building realistic model railroad scenery, which is for people all the way from beginner through to, I just want a refresher. And I really loved writing it, but it takes a lot of time and I had to test a lot of things. So I think further up, I think it was Brewski said practice. Yep, there we go. He was 2 for 2 at that. The very last thing at the bottom is practice. Yeah, you always need to practice. So I had done my aquarium. I'd got everything sorted. I filled it up with water. Now they tell you to glue your wood to a rock. So I glued my one piece of wood to a rock. The other piece of wood, I couldn't find a rock to glue it to. I wanted black lava rock. None of the pieces were particularly big, and I didn't feel they were going to weigh down this bit of wood that much. So I didn't think much of it. I thought, well, it probably will float, but it should be all right. Yay, famous last words. I filled it up, and when it was a few inches off the top, the lava rock floated up, the really big one, because it has air bubbles in it, and it floated, so I had to push that one down. It was holding the other bit of wood down, so that then needed pushing, and none of the wood quite ended up, or the rocks, where I originally had them. And you never see that. I've never seen anyone in a YouTube video fill it up and then rocks float up. So, you're going to make mistakes. And that was one of the reasons why I was doing this video. Digger's plugging my book still though. It's a great book. I definitely recommend it. Thanks, Digger. And Ravenson, I always want to buy Kathy's book, but I still haven't done it yet. At the end of the month, I always have a problem that no money is left over. Yeah, I have that problem midway through the month. So let's look what the next slide is. Okay, so this is one of my favourite slogans, and I'll play the clip, which doesn't seem to have any sound on it. But anyway, I'll play the clip next. Anybody who's into Star Wars should know this phrase. But very much, no matter how good you are at reading, no matter how many YouTube videos you watch, you're going to have to actually get out there and model before it will work. So this is probably my favourite, I have to admit, my favourite Star Wars character. And this is quite early on in the Clone Wars. It's Captain Rex. Absolutely adore the dude. He's just a really good character in Star Wars. And totally underrated. So there he is. Oh, sorry. I keep pressing this, hoping it will go on to the next one, and there we go. So I want to show you a little bit of my journey from being a noob to being where I am today at modelling. It's an interesting one because I would still say I've got huge amounts to learn. But I started back in the 1980s as a child modelling. And my dad had a Hornby 00 set, which we used to get out at Christmas. And, you know, here's a picture of me blaming my dad. This was our canal boat when I was younger. And we used to moor next to railways so we could see the railways. I also blame my mum for giving me a massive love. I don't blame her. It's brilliant. A massive love of science. So this is me reading a Doctor Who book. Actually, I have an even younger picture of me pre-going to school with a blue sticker on my knee reading a Doctor Who book. So I started young and really got into them. And obviously we're still reading them years later. So for me, there was an early encounter into it, which basically went like this. Take 1 8 foot by 4 foot plywood sheet, add my dad's Hornby 00 trains, add green poster paint, add sand. Yep, sand was the highlight, the absolute highlight of my modelling experience. Now let's just imagine this today. You're a young, I would have been maybe 11, 12 doing this at most. You're young. You get out your dad's set, you put on your green poster paint, you add your sand, you paint your white lines really thick because you're not very good and you're new, and that's what mine looked like. You put it online. It's the first thing you've ever put on social media. And all everybody says to you is how rubbish it is, how bad it is, how nobody uses sand or green poster paint today. Just bear that in mind, because we all start with the green poster paint and sand stage. Now, some of us may then skip straight on to more expensive products because we've seen what we should use on YouTube and we've got more disposable income. But when we're starting out on a hobby, quite often we start with the equivalent of sand and green poster paint because we don't know if we want it. We maybe want to experiment a bit. Maybe that's what we have available and we're getting it from another hobby. You know, quite often we don't start out with the best products. We just start out with what we have on hand. And then I took early, this is one of my favourite layouts when I was, it was in the 1985 March Railway Modeller. And it was a slate quarry. And actually looking back over this is what made me do Port de Norwich, which also had a bit of water in it because I like water. I mean, I do think as I look at this as an adult experienced modeller, that maybe the locos wouldn't be bright rust coloured while they were working. Because that just doesn't really happen. You know, you have to maintain them. But I have to say, I loved this. And there was another one that had a resin pond with a submerged wheel in it. And I adored that picture as well. So, yeah. And, you know, like many of you, it wasn't my only hobby. I had a brief diversion into a quilt. This was my visit. This is early 20s. This is a visit to the US. So these are states I went to. If you're from America, you'll recognise the states. And I did it with different patchworks and colours for each one. And there's some photos in there. Still hanging on the wall, actually. Can't get to it for all the junk in front of it, but it's still on the wall. And then I went on holiday in 2000 and went to World of Railways in Mevagissey. And that's when I got back into the hobby. So at this point, I'm late 20s. So I've skipped a decade. And my first layout, ignore the fact it's got American stuff on it, was actually a UK layout. This is the first one. There's a lot, when I look at it now, that's good, but there's also a lot that leaves a lot to be desired. And it's this. It was this section of track past my house that was here. And I modelled it, you know, model what you know. So the white lines have improved. It's not bad in some ways. Bit shiny of a boxcar. But, you know, it's not bad. As first proper layouts go, as an adult, it just was a bit boring. I did my first diorama. It was okay. There were a few flaws on this, a few things that were a little bit large, you know, but I've still got it down there. It was to slot in, and that was 04. So I've come a long way from my childhood, which I don't have any photos of, sadly, poster paint and sand for my first layout. And that was about as far as it got before I went to the US. So I'd seen a lot of US stuff at Derby in 02, I think, and decided I wanted to model the US. So I had my New Haven layout and I had my UK one underneath before finally, and it didn't get much further than that because having two of them didn't really work, before finally, had a little excursion into dioramas. These are two, both of which I've passed on to new homes for space reasons as much as anything. So then I had Loft Layout version 2. And I've kept the two bottom dioramas there, but the rest of it has gone, more or less. But I was still doing things like Transformers alongside it. This is my Transformers diorama with... so my Transformers dioramas, the figures and the rubble, and then the backgrounds are sort of CGI'd in, or composited. I did the bordello, that's behind you. In fact, on that corner over there, we've got the Transformers, the first diorama, and the bordello all sat there. And don't worry, I don't get much further. I made a spaceship out of junk at Christmas, which is the bottom left. And I started the swamp layout that is over there and over there in pieces that I've never finished. And I got into things like scratch building. So you can see, and then I started a YouTube channel. And that is when my modelling really changed. I'm going to talk about that next. So let's have a look what people have been saying in chat. Digger says, Ravison Express, you'll be glad you bought it. I'm reading it over and over as I start my new layout. Oh, thanks, Digger. Ed, reminds me of one of the Matrix games with the quote, sometimes you drop a rock and it falls into the sky. Yeah, floating rocks. And Ed says, kids these days don't know how versatile sand is. I use it a lot. My famous tile grout that I adore needs sand in it or it's too fine and the liquid doesn't go into it. But you know, it really is a versatile product. It's great. It actually isn't great at representing sand, but it is good. Ed says you want grass, sand, you want mud, sand, you want gravel, sand, you want sand, sand. Yeah, you have to just find the different coarsenesses of sand, because I actually find sand and beige tile grout mixed together comes out really well. Doug, who's only number 3 on the crown, says, my daughter made a mask inspired by something she followed. I helped. It turned out amazing. That's good to know. Ravison Express says that's a really nice layout. Thank you. I don't know which one, but thank you. Brewski says sawdust, coffee grounds, dried tea from various blends. I like chamomile tea. I think that comes out really well. And then Doug says, I posted pictures onto Reddit where I was loved by fans and hated by people who hate the character. Yeah. People aren't able to look at the modelling without looking at the character. It's a problem, isn't it? Brewski's, I'm still working on homemade trees. It's on my to-do list. I've done, for the book, I did a lot of different types of tree I hadn't done before, and, you know, they're good. Digger says, I prefer a lot of the American models, especially the buildings. It seems the buildings we get in the UK always have been something from Trumpton or Postman Pat. But things are changing, thankfully. Yeah, some great guys out there now really pushing it. Tamsin says, dried herbs for leaf scatter. That's a good idea. My go-to for leaf dead leaves is either real autumn leaves blended, because then you get a lighter brown, which I haven't found otherwise, or chamomile tea, which I think is really good. Oh, David said something. I was about to read it and it went. Okay. So, there's some great ideas there, and I've got some really old parsley and oregano. Note how I pronounce it because I'm British. That's oregano for those on the other side of the pond. oregano, and it's going old, like it's just in the back of a cupboard in a plastic bottle. It's still slightly green because it's in a sealed-ish bottle, but you know, something like that would be great for, as Tamsin says, herbs for scatter. But I suspect if it was out in the open, it would lose its colour quite quickly. But remember, if they're a little bit big, you can always blend them. And I'm thinking I want to do a market section, district, whatever, for my sci-fi. I've got some nutmeg, which is really old, and I've got some peppercorns, which comes in, you can get them in pink and black and green. And I'm thinking they'll be really great to put into some baskets to look like alien plants. So Tamsin says thyme and rosemary are good for small twigs. I like rosemary. I've not tried thyme, but yeah, rosemary is really good. It's got a nice shape, and plus it smells good. David Hone says, I've just finished over 150 handmade trees. Oh, it passed the time, he says, but definitely. Sand was involved. Was that on the bark to give the bark texture? That is very impressive, David. That is very impressive. And Tigger says, wow, David, that's a lot of trees. So Ed, I recently made some IJA for bolt action. I used 1/3 mix of mixed herbs and 2/3 tea to make ground cover. And a few 3D printed plants, and they look plenty fine enough for gaming. That, yeah. I don't know what IJA is. IJA. Anyway, it is a good point. And I think for gaming, you want something nice and... Oh, Imperial Japanese Army. Thanks for that, Tamsin. I was thinking it was like some kind of scenery. I was thinking, scenery? But yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, so that's really, really cool. So that's lots of homemade trees, says Tamsin. And Boxcar Jerry's arrived. Good evening, folks, listening while weathering track. Yeah, weathering track. Track's one of my least favourite things to weather, just because it's fiddly. So enjoy it. So what did having a YouTube channel do to my modelling? Well, I was no longer new, but I was trying loads of new stuff. And I did loads of new stuff, techniques, and I love trying new techniques because every week I had to put something new out there. And you can only go over the same ground a few times before it doesn't work on a YouTube channel. So I spent ages from 2016 through to about 2023. So it was quite a good period of time doing weekly videos, eventually to more monthly, really large diorama builds. And I did everything from how to paint brick to water. I did a whole snow and ice section. I did a massive amount on water and other things. And it made me try loads of new techniques. But what I find the trouble with YouTube is I only felt I ever got my dioramas to 95% because then I had to get them out. And that last 5% comes with more time. Probably saw this with my recent video about redoing my Jurassic Park diorama and making it a little bit wetter, putting on the bit I'd missed on the road, all that kind of thing. And it's important to say that it was okay before and it did a great YouTube video, but actually I feel much happier with the diorama now I've come back and had a chance to do it again. And it's not changed that much, just a bit of finishing really. So I do think my quantity went up and I now know how to do a huge number of techniques, but I feel like somewhere along the line my quality also went down in that period. Maybe it was just my perfectionism for some of the stuff couldn't compete with just the timetable. And in the end, I sort of ran myself into the ground trying to compete with perfectionism, big vision, small time frame. So let's just look quickly at new techniques. How might you try a new technique? And, you know, for everybody, there's always something new you might be trying. So for Digger, he's just doing a massively exciting new model railway. And there'll be bits in that he hasn't done before. So how does he start? Well, he's got my book, so that's really good. But whether it's scenery, it may just be you want to change up your lighting. You might want to do resin water because you've not done it. Maybe static grass because you've not done that. Maybe it's 3D printing, which obviously is now close to what I do. Or maybe you want to learn how to do Arduino so your people can, feed hens that are pecking. Whatever it is, there's many different things, and there's always new techniques to learn. I didn't put anything on there about new painting techniques. There's also, instead of painting techniques, there could be different ways of weathering. There's loads of things. It's always, to me, this is what I love about it, always something new to learn. So I would say the most important thing is test them out. The aquarium that I've done, back to the aquarium example, I said I wouldn't talk about it. The aquarium I've done is not the aquarium I wanted to do. I wanted to do a massive sci-fi research lab on a dripping moss wall. And I want the moss wall to be really tall to drip in. I love all those Far East videos with dripping this and water running everywhere. I absolutely adore them. I've got all the stuff for it I've bought for various dioramas. I don't actually need to buy a pump, an air pump, a fogger. I don't need to buy any of that. So I can just go ahead and do them. But actually what I decided to do was this fairly normal looking, generic, and I haven't got a photo, generic aquarium. It's not generic, it's black lava rock and spider rock, as I said. It's going to look beautiful, it's going to have fish in it, but it's not a pushing the envelope one. Why not? It's the first aquarium I've ever done in my life. I want my fish to live. It has the weirdness of there are living animals in it. You don't get that with, your diorama. If your diorama goes wrong, paint it. If it goes, you don't like it, put another layer on. If your soil looks funny, put another layer on. There's always another layer you can add, and then you can just say, oh, it's weathering. Things look better with multiple layers. So sometimes you just have to start easy. And I think one of the things is people watch these big YouTube videos and they decide they want, Digger's got a massive layout he's doing. Fair play to him. They decide they're going to start with that big layout. But actually, it can be really hard to start with something that big, in my experience. And now I would always do modular, smaller layouts because I actually probably would get bored. Me, just being the type of person I want to try something new. I like designing stuff. And there's a point in a large layout where you're just doing a lot more of the same. And so for me, new techniques are perfect and learning them is what I enjoy doing. Not everybody's in that boat. So many people finish layouts and fair play to them. They have done something I've never really ever even considered finishing. A large layout. The only one I've ever actually finished is Port de Norwich. So anyway, how do you learn these things? Well, you start with something simple. You start with that basic diorama that is maybe copying one you've already seen. No, you're not learning anything exciting. You're not going to add anything to the social media experience that hasn't been seen before. But it is going to work. You've seen someone else do it, and you will get that most important thing of practice. You need to get your hand in. If I haven't modelled for a while, I haven't got the fine motor skill than if I'm doing it every day. If I haven't painted a mini for a while, I struggle to paint them. It doesn't help that I can't see as well as I used to, so actually I struggle to see them anyway. So if it's a print you've designed, test print it. If it's for your main layout and you want to know, does this grass look good? Do a little mini diorama of it. Do maybe a 12-inch, 8-inch, 6-inch, 4-inch. I did loads of snow and ice that were about this big, probably 3-inch little blocks of foam core. And I just tried out so many techniques. I did a whole playlist on them of all the different snow and ice techniques. Try something small. You can just do it on your main layout, but actually it might be easier to do it at your workbench. Try 5 or 6 options, test it out, see which one works for you, and then do it somewhere else, like the main layout when you know what you want to do. Perhaps if you're new to model railways and you've never done one before, do a micro layout. If you're new to tabletop gaming, do enough terrain for a skirmish game, not a full board. Start small and do test pieces. And If you're doing something like test prints, give them to friends to test. Now this is really important. I look at the people on my on chat, and I can see that Shergle's on there, Doug's on there, Tamsin's on there, John's on there. They've all been print testers, and they've all printed and given me invaluable feedback on my prints. Doug always wants to do things that basically it would never even occur to me to do, and it's brilliant because suddenly I end up with new ideas. Shergle's trying to do the short walls, whereas I tend to think in tall walls because I'm doing 35mm and he's doing 28mm, and the small walls are designed for 28mm, and you put a topper on to get to 35mm, so you could buy the same one and use them in different scales because you might have multiple games you want to use them for. So having Shergle go, well, you haven't done this, is really helpful. So it is invaluable to have friends. Take those dioramas when you've done them to friends to show them, to see what they think. Which of these grass do you like best? If you're colourblind and you don't know what to do with your grass, take it to someone else, and then, you know, you've got the 3 bags of grass you bought. You know, they say these 2 bags look great. You don't need to worry about your grass looking funny because you've got your test piece and you've had it checked before you do like 100 square foot of it. So yeah, friends are really helpful. If you haven't got friends, join a Discord or a Facebook group that you trust, and you know, show it to people on there. So back up in chat a while. David said that the sand was part of the texture paint for the pine bark. It looks really good, doesn't it? A bit of sand in there. Hi, Boxcar Jerry. I think I've said that. If I get stuck, I call Kathy. Digger does. But you don't get stuck. You're too good for that. I just give you a bit of advice every now and then. Boxcar Jerry says, I call Digger when I get stuck. Funny. So Doug says he calls Shergle when I get stuck. I just put it on Discord and someone will come and tell me the answer when I get stuck. So David says, I've been pondering why I can't get photos of my layout I'm happy with. I suspect the lighting, not enough and not the right temperature. Need to order some cooler LED strips. Yeah, I really like cob strips at the moment. Someone just posted them in our print testing channel, which is private to print testers, I'm afraid. But I've really moved on to cob strips because you don't get the dotting that you get with LED strips. And they tend not to be in as many colours, but there's some really cool stuff out there now. Doug says he delegates all painting to Number One Child. And Number One Child does a very good job on it. So Boxcar and Jerry, I use a big light for photography and get nice results. To be honest, I have massive lights, so I'm not going to give you any advice, but I have newer LED panel lights above mine, and but actually the light that's lighting me now is a newer, it's about that big, and I've actually soldered in a mains cable into the battery at the back because it's supposed to be battery, but I normally use the rechargeable battery. I've got 4 of them. I normally use rechargeable batteries when I'm doing it, and I've got a couple of little photography areas set up. So if I want to do minis, it's already set up with a grey background. I used to have that by the window, so I could just use daylight and a reflector. And actually, daylight is really good. You really get some of the best lighting with daylight. Yeah, Doug says, I have access to a really large light, but only during the day. Great minds, Doug, great minds. And Digger says, some really good LED lights available now. Yeah, there definitely are. Doug just says, fusion lighting for the win. It's true. Shergle says, hey, I get stuck too. We all have blind spots. Yeah, but you don't get stuck as often as the rest of us. So that's good. We all need someone we can turn to. So small dioramas. I've talked a bit about test prints and dioramas, but I would like to advocate... right, okay. I'll read the bottom one because I'm in the way. I'd like to advocate for these small dioramas, only a few inches square for you to test stuff out. You can also take them to shows. Our local Solihull Scale Modelling Club go to 2 or 3 shows a year where they have a stand, and you know, it can be useful to fill things up there. And the bottom one says techniques not needed on a main layout. So sometimes you might want to try snow and ice, and you're modelling July, which is what I was doing. I was modelling July 4th, and I wanted to snow on July 5th actually, I think, because that was the date I was there in the locations, and I wanted to try snow and ice. Well, you know, or you want to do a different scale. So this Kino is 1 to 35, and I wasn't doing anything else in that scale, so I was able to do this. Doesn't that photo look good in black background? But I was able to do this in 1 to 35, just as a little extra thing, really. Now, for those of you doing big main layouts who are model railway people, I am a great advocate for pop-out dioramas. When I was talking about my first ever diorama, that is still there, and it was on my first layout, but I was able to keep it because it's just on a bit of wood. I've got a couple of the bits of the small modular layout still, which I kept. You know, if you do dioramas, I kept Martin Machine and I've kept my Threadwell from the other layout. I got rid of a lot of them, but if they're on a base, they're easy to transfer should you ever get rid of one layout and put them on another. If you are to work on a workbench, because I didn't really have anywhere in my layout to work, then put things on pop-out dioramas. Twofold. One, you can change. You know, I had 3 buildings planned for the one spot, so when I ran out of space, I could go back and pop out one of my existing dioramas, do a new one and shove it in there and do something completely different. So you can easily do that. You can go through and pop them out. It's easy then to take photos because you can get them in an area that you can light well. And the only thing you need to watch is that you have a consistent scenery on both sides of where your diorama pops out. Now, you could do that by having a road running down the end, so there's an actual division there anyway, or just having the same brass colour on both pieces. But I find pop-out dioramas really good, and this was my pop-out Threadwell diorama. If you're still learning and you want to try something new, again, start small. Try a micro layout first. It includes working tracks, so it's a better step up from a diorama. You get to practice your track work, and it can be a layout in its own right. This was actually Port de Norwich, on the start of Port de Norwich here, but this was Port de Norwich version 1. This all ended up in the bin. I wasn't at all happy with it, so this is Port de Norwich version 1 that got binned, this picture. Okay, so I'll just go back. Oh, no, back. Okay, here we go. Let's have a look at chat for a sec. So Brewski says, I think my biggest problem is planning. A lot of stuff I do is a rough idea that grows organically, resulting in a lot of scrap. Well, I scrapped this in-time micro layout we've got up at the moment because I tried loads of new stuff, too much new stuff, and it didn't work as a result. But sometimes if you enjoy working like that, consider that part of the hobby. And remember, this is a hobby. It is supposed to be fun. And you might have a lot of scrap, but if that's how you work, it's not a problem. Lily, hi. Welcome back. Oh, Digger's number 1 again. David, random thought, but courtesy of Model U. I wonder how many layouts have their own Kathy Miller. Well, I know there's one on the Port de Norwich layout because Tim added it on, or hit her on. But yeah, I wonder that as well. I've never asked him how well it sold, but it was up a lot longer than the other ones. So Lily's currently working on her scale at 2M class 1996,001. An N-scale dystopia. Welcome aboard. Oh, Digger says he has a mini Kathy, of course. Lily says, how do I do a micro layout in G-scale? Exactly that, a micro layout in G-scale. I've seen a 4-foot G-scale micro layout of an industrial yard. It was just very little to it, but greatly detailed, huge amount of detailing. It was a beautiful micro layout. It came to one of our Arden Rail shows we ran. Really good. And the fiddle yard was in a building at the back, so it kind of went forward and went in. Now, you don't get a lot on, but you can do them. People do. And actually sometimes in that instance, the actual railway models themselves become as much of an importance as the micro layout itself. Whereas on a thing where you've got hundreds of trains on it, every extra train you add on kind of diminishes each one individually because they're now one of a group. So if one or two of them are great, they won't stand out as much. But if you've got them in G scale, they really stand out. 6001, not 7001. Cool. Isn't that what I said? Oh well. She was meant to be the first of her type, but remained to be a unique build. Cool. So I'm now going to talk about that bit. You're new at a hobby. You've posted your first thing ever. It's a brand new social media account. Nobody knows who you are. And you post online. What do you do about the criticism? Because let's face it, when you're new, you don't know what you're about and it's really hard, and you will get criticism because when you post something on social media, you will get a comment or 20. And I think there's two main reasons that people put comments on things. Now, I'm ignoring the fact that some people do it just to be horrible, because actually I don't generally get those. I don't get people just posting on my stuff to say, that sucks, you suck, I hate you. I see it a lot on Star Wars posts, and I did once have somebody write that Star Wars wasn't for women. That confused me, because I'm pretty sure Princess Leia was a woman. Pretty sure Ahsoka's a woman. But yeah, they actually wrote and told me that Star Wars wasn't for women. It's out there. But I think there's two main reasons that people put criticisms on people's work. And I'd love to see what you think about this, because this is quite a big topic. And when you're new at something, you don't feel as certain. So you're looking for validation, perhaps a little bit more in what you've done than if you've done it before and you know it's okay. And if you don't have many friends doing the same sort of thing, sometimes you don't have a group of people that you really know will give you good advice. You're just out on the open internet. It can be quite hard when you're new. Like if I was to go and post aquarium stuff now, I don't know anything about aquariums. And if someone said you're doing it completely wrong, I'd feel really bad. I'd be like, am I? And I wouldn't know enough to disagree with them. And that's the trouble, when you just don't know enough to disagree with the people because you're new, which is what we're talking about. So first up, people genuinely want to help. And they assume that you've put it up there because you want criticism. And I've heard it said a number of times, well, you shouldn't put things on social media if you don't want criticism. Why not? People put stuff on social media to share it because they've enjoyed doing something and they want to share it. That doesn't mean they want a 10-page epic on what's wrong with it. And whether you ask for criticism or not, you will get it. But they mean well, these people. They look at my green poster paint and sand, and they kind of approach it in the very blunt, that sucks, have you thought about static grass? It would make it look better. Or they approach it, hopefully if they're genuinely wanting to help with that looks really great. I found recently that static grass works really well for me because it's got the right texture. You know, why don't you look into that for your next lot? And bearing in mind, I'm sure everyone's been taught the praise sandwich where you say something great before you say something bad, before you say something great. I'm very much of the view when people ask for my opinion, I will always find something positive in what they're doing, because there is always something in everyone's modelling, whether it's something I haven't seen, whether it's just that they've tried really hard and made a good effort and I can see what their intention was, even if they've not quite pulled it off. I will always find something to praise in people's modelling, because I am not here to tell people they suck. That's not what I'm about. I'm here to encourage people to model. I'm here to make people feel good about their hobby, because they're not doing it for a job. They don't need a performance review on it. They just want to feel good about what they've done. The other set of people are more problematic, because actually they don't really care what you think, and they don't really care about your modelling in some way. What they want is an opportunity to show off what they know to everybody else. So their comments aren't about you, they're about themselves and how much they know. And yeah, okay, let me just show you the next slide. True story. Somebody once wrote to me after I did a video on painting backdrops and basically told me the sky was blue. Yep, he actually wrote and told me the sky was blue, it fades to the horizon and the clouds get smaller as you go down. I mean, like, would you write and tell someone the sky is blue? You probably wouldn't. But I know this guy really well. And the only time I've really blown up at him, despite the fact he does this all the time, is when he tried to explain my professional job to me and what an audit was. And I'm a qualified auditor and he isn't. And I made him know that that was my job. I knew exactly how to audit. And he spluttered out a, well, I thought it might be different in your country. No, it wasn't. I am a professional accountant who audits American companies sometimes on their behalf as well as British ones. You know, I do know what an audit is. But when it comes to telling me the sky's blue, I let it go because he's actually a good friend. And I know that sometimes people are a bit intimidated. I'm on a YouTuber, I'm known, I've been on TV. And they're not saying it to put me down. They're not actually saying it because they think I think the sky is green or because I think the sky is black, blue, whatever colour. They know I know the sky is blue. They probably know, because I've literally just said it in the video they're commenting on, that the sky is paler towards the bottom and that the clouds get smaller towards the bottom. Because I've literally just said it on the video they're commenting on. So they know I know it. This isn't about me. This is actually nothing to do with me. I'm just someone that they want to show that they understand it too. And this is where it can be difficult, because someone can say something to you that they mean well, and it's the internet. You have no idea whether they're telling you genuinely, whether they're telling you because they want to feel important, whether they're telling you because they're proud of the fact they know the answer and they want to show you that they know because you're someone they respect. You don't know if they're a 12-year-old boy. You don't know if they're an 80-year-old woman. Quite often, you just don't know anything about them. And this is where it's really hard on the internet, because I see so many people get offended by people. And it's like, yeah, it's the internet. So my advice, which you don't have to take, is really just ignore it all. That's what you have to do. Sometimes you have to explain to people why you won't do what they want, especially if they're pushy. I had a guy, I wrote something I was having, I can't remember what it was, I was having a problem with. And I wrote that I was having a problem with it and I was still thinking about the right solution. And then I wrote a few hours later what the solution was. And on the first post, this bloke came on and said, ring me and we can talk about it. And I went back and said, I've already fixed it, see the post. And to be honest, I'm not going to ring somebody I don't know. He got really put out by that. And eventually I calmed him down and pointed out, did he have a wife? Did he have a daughter? Did he want some random bloke off the internet insisting that they rang him? Like, what is that about? Is that what they wanted to happen? And he was fine with me after that. And we chatted a bit and whatever. But actually, I think he just wanted to be able to say he'd shown Kathy Miller how to do something. And I found out years later, the same guy, another woman, had been nice and friendly and then basically gone around dissing her to everybody. So, yeah, narrow escape is all I can say. But yeah, and I very carefully avoided the word mansplaining. But if you're a woman, not every man mansplains. Not every man feels the need to explain the sky is blue. These are individuals, and it isn't just... there's always somebody who knows better than you, regardless of sex or age, and will want to tell you about it, no matter how good you are. Okay, well, lost the mouse. Right, ooh, loads of people. Okay, all right, where did I get to? Okay, here we go. On the rivet counters, tearing your tentative first steps to shreds. Oh, yeah, it is. And I think this is it. You don't know whether the person you're tearing to shreds is a 12-year-old, someone who's handicapped, someone who's really proud of it, or someone who wants your critique. You just don't know who they are. That's half the problem. Neckbeard social skills, got to love them. It's not just men though. I mean, one of my favourite reactions was I was at a show. This just made me laugh. And this guy says, "Oh, I saw the photos you posted online." And his wife was like, "What photos? What photos?" I don't know what I could see her mind had gone to. She's posting new pictures of herself. That's where her mind went. I'm like, yeah, the photos of my modelling. John says, there was a superb 16mm mining layout at a show years ago, about 2 foot of track and a point, but the detail work on the lines there was enough to keep it interesting. Yeah, exactly. That's just perfect. Lily says, yes, but Princess Leia was just an object in a bikini for men to gawk at, etc., etc. You could look at it like that. I look at Lieutenant Uhura in Star Trek, and there's thousands of black women who say they felt they could achieve because she was in that show. As a white person growing up, a generation later than her, I look back now and think she was just a glorified secretary. But actually for the time, she was hugely advanced. And loads of people seeing that were inspired to do more. I look at it now with my, this century hat on and go, they originally had Nurse Chapel as a first, number one. And they demoted her to nurse, not even doctor, but nurse, because nobody wanted to see a woman in a position of authority. So, we can look at things and say, yes, but Princess Leia was X. But actually in the 70s, she was a kick-ass babe. She rescued herself from the Death Star. She wasn't just a bit of pretty. She actually was far more competent than Luke or Han, or Han, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Yes, there was a big misstep in 3, but to be honest, I think George Lucas often missteps on the way he dresses women. I look at the stuff that Padme wears and I go, yeah, what? No woman would wear that for a comfortable evening dinner. It's got feathers on and a black... Yeah, anyway. But yeah, Lily then says to them, not my opinion. It is, and there's a lot of men who will have that opinion. But yeah, I don't... Those type of men are going to think that about any woman practically. Or they're going to complain it's woke because they don't fancy the women in it. So there we go. General Leia, says David. New model railway. Ironic saying Star Wars is not for women when episode 4 has the Pride and Prejudice formula at heart of it. Yeah, it does. But to be honest, Hayden Christensen, I found really painful. Padme comes out of it better. She is actually a very flawed character too. But I'm just looking at it and I just go bad already. This is just painful. I actually am not a huge fan of the movies, but I love the Clone Wars and I love that era best. Shirk says, yeah, if someone posts something that they are enjoying, I don't want to knock them down. And I think that's the important thing. Hi, Timber. Definitely better late than never. Great to have you with us. There hasn't been many adult chat bots, so you've been safe. Shergel, the sandwich method sucks. Instead, if there's something you like in it, what they did, point out that you liked it. That's very true. It's more if you want to say something bad that the sandwich method is kind of helpful. What I normally do is, having learnt it, is as a manager, is to ask them where they think they did badly and maybe lead them down to it because it will be in a review. When it's someone's hobby, I'm not going to do that. It's just like, this is their hobby. Unless they specifically ask me so they can improve. And I've had people send me models, pictures, go, how can I improve this? And I read comments like, everything looks rusted and decrepit. And actually, some things would still be new. It's the 70s, not every single item was graffitied. But you lose, everything just starts to look the same. You need variety. I'll make comments like that. So what you're doing is excellent, but just perhaps spread it out a bit more and put more blanks in or something. Yeah. Lily. Next up, water is pretty wet. It can be. Shergel says, I'd refract on that feedback for a bit. Mansplaining, gotta love it. Excuses, says Lily. I am going to say mansplaining is telling me the sky is blue. But actually the guy that was doing it is a really good friend, and I'm never going to fall out with him over emails like this because, generally he's a really, really nice guy. And I suspect he does it to men as well as women. I think he probably does it more. But I remember somebody telling me how useful they found him explaining the basics to him. So I think sometimes it is, I always feel like I've got to prove that I'm good at modelling. So if someone comes out with a criticism, no matter how it's intentioned, I then have to work on, well, is that what they meant? Because you cannot get tone always on the internet. Sparky, is the sky still blue when it is night time? Asking for Tigger. It's blue in Australia when it's night time in the UK. Anyway, hi Sparky. Doug, I'm not diplomatic enough to sandwich, but I try not to criticise without having something useful to say. Yeah, and actually there's some people who will just criticise everything and you just get used to it as their modus operandi. And if you know them, actually if you know people, you can put the tone behind it quite a lot more. Shergel, anyone that says the clouds are smaller when they're further away are just offering their perspective. I'm going to follow the stating the obvious facepalm there. So Lily, oh no. Oh, hang on. Right, okay, sorry. It all scrolled up at a moment there. Right. Sounds like you're a lot more patient than I am. I'm more ready to burn even the tiniest bridge over the first appearance of someone's patronising me, gendered motivation or no. So I think I'm probably a different generation, Lily. I think you're a lot younger than me. And when I grew up, all men were a lot more patronising, certainly at work. I was the first generation of women who were allowed their own credit cards. I'm the first generation of women who actually had independent jobs. And went to university as a sort of standard. My mum did not have that. She went to uni, but she was rare. But she couldn't buy her own house when she was younger, and she couldn't have her own credit card because men did that. So I just see probably a different age. And I'm also closer in age to a lot of the people who are now in their 60s and 70s. And so modelling has always been 60 or 70-year-old men. And even when I was in my 20s, perhaps most of the people I knew who were modelling then were in their 40s and 50s. So it's always been a little bit older. And, I think people today have a different expectation than I was brought up with. But my mum brought me up to say, if you've got nothing good to say, don't say anything at all. And that works in response to people, as well as receiving it. But I was chatting to my mum at lunchtime because I knew I was going to bring this up. And to be honest, yeah, we just waved most of it past. I will tell my dad off if he's particularly sexist. But yeah, I think it is a generational thing. It is getting better. I think, well, the internet is not an obvious place to spot that. But I think it is better in general society. And Lily says not every man, but shockingly a lot. Maybe. I feel very blessed. I've had very little sexism, but then maybe it's just I don't perceive it as sexism because I'm just used to it. Norm says, I've seen long-term YouTube providers completely crash out over a critical comment. Sometimes they just had enough. It's kind of sad. I understand that because you can pour your heart and soul in. And I've shared in the past about having people turn up in my house, I'd invited, showing them a diorama and none of them said anything good. And afterwards, when I said how upset I was, one of them had said it was good, but one of them said, "Oh, it was great." I'm like, "But you didn't say that." And the look on their face was like, "No, I didn't." And that's the trouble. I don't think they realise they haven't said it sometimes. So I think it's just a thing for us all to be wary of, which is why, I keep losing my mouse. Let's try that. I'm going to put up this quote, which is one of my favourites. I wanted to put it on the t-shirt. I actually have a t-shirt with this one on, but the t-shirt is in the wash and I was gutted when I realised that, and I wasn't going to get it washed and ironed today. So yeah, I wore it on holiday last week, so not done. But this was like something that was on the wall at work. And I think it is just such a valid thing for the internet. So I'm going to put it up there. But yeah, Doug says, my favourite ever Twitter conversation featured a lady complaining about mansplaining, asking what it was all about, followed by a man replying to explain what mansplaining is. Her reply was cutting. Lily, I mean, modelling can be interpreted in a certain way. Oh, I presume that's in response to my modelling, the woman getting worked up. Timber says text chat is the worst way of communication. So very easy to misinterpret the contextual element. Very true. And I think if you meet people face to face, you're not going to diss a 12-year-old's attempt if they're holding a diorama in their hand, but you can diss it online really easily, without realising it. Shergel says Ripley was pretty kick-ass for 1979. To be honest, so was Leia. She did blast her own way out, and she did make the men look really stupid on the Death Star. And for sure, says Doug. But she still had a scene where she took all her clothes off, getting ready, And actually, Ben's got the model of her pulling a thing down, it still expected. Even last decade, they did a Star Trek, was it Beyond? Anyway, where the woman gets down to a bikini and the man's in full clothes. It's still there. Oh, Leia, I feel both are true. We can appreciate the steps forward but still be critical of the steps backward. To be honest, I won't watch the original Star Trek because it is so misogynistic. I can't cope with it. I'm like, I do not live in that era and I can't cope in it. Timber, the force is strong with the mods. We have banished them a long time ago. Oh, you have. You have. Oh, I keep flipping too many. Right, Galaxy Quest. I have one job on this ship. It's a stupid job, but it's my job and I'm going to do it. I almost watched that the other day. It came up on a feed somewhere. Tim says, I have an excellent excuse for being late. I was catching up with Strange New Worlds and lost track of time. I haven't started it yet because I'm waiting for the whole season to be over to binge watch because that's what I generally do. We're watching High Potential about a cleaner who helps out the police. Yep, it's fun. I was going to watch Section 31, but it had a 1-star rating. I'm like, I have Emperor Giorgio in my hallway, which some of you may have seen. And I'm a bit like, 1 star is not good. So I need to work out, has anyone seen the Section 31 video movie? Is it any good? Lily, I'm feeling having to prove yourself. I've had that feeling as well in purely masculine environments and just get so depressed from it. It's part of why I don't do clubs anymore. This isn't about it being men or women. I actually just have to prove myself to myself. It wouldn't matter if it was a man or a woman making a comment. It's more about me wanting to prove that I'm a good modeller. And that's just competitiveness. And I refuse to be competitive in my hobby now. I was very competitive and did contests and stuff in model railways. And in some ways I felt it ruined things a bit. So that isn't actually, although I can understand totally what you mean, that some of the masculine environments can be, but to be honest, the NMRA wasn't. I didn't really have any comments from people. National Model Railroad Association, which models American outline in Britain, I never really had a problem there. They were really good. And I remember commenting on it to one of the guys, and he said, thing is, you're such a good modeller, Kathy. You were known for your modelling. And I think the first thing I went to, I took my diorama that was down there, that's my houses. And he said, you've just always been known for your modelling. So, and also I was kind of winning top prize or, getting really good grades. So I don't think they had a leg to stand on. Shergel says, once guys realise how rare it is to find a gal that likes gadgets, they're rather helpful. True, especially guys who suddenly realise that a girlfriend who likes Star Wars means they can actually watch more Star Wars rather than less. On our age differences, Lily, officially I'm 26, but I'm an old soul. So I tend to be very much ready to stand up for what I'm owed in terms of equality and also for the sake of my mental health. I don't put my mental health on other people. So there's a really great Jedi quote, which, if I just block the person if they're really rude, that's where I go with it. But I rarely do that. But there's a great Jedi quote which basically says, I can't control anyone's reaction but myself. So I don't feel the need to engage with difficult people. If I argue with somebody on the internet, I'm not going to change them. If they genuinely wanted, let's just go back to these two types of people here. If they're the top person and they genuinely wanted to help, they're only going to be offended if I say I'm not interested in their help, because they genuinely wanted to help. Whether I ask for it or not, their view is I put it online, so I must want their help. I'm not gonna make them realise their help isn't wanted particularly. If they want to show off and show how much they know, me telling them that I don't appreciate them putting it on also isn't going to help. I'm never going to change these people's views on anything I say online. And if they're trolling for any reason, I'm certainly not going to change their view. So I just don't engage with them because, quite frankly, none of them are going to change their viewpoint. So why waste all my time? I've done it in the past. You know, this guy who said, give me, phone number, ring me. It took me ages to calm him down. Then he goes and does it to someone else. And I'm like, it really wasn't one. So when guys send me their phone numbers now, and I still do get it, just ignore it. If they can't take the hint by the time they've sent me the number for the 20th time, their fault, not mine. If they send me another comment about my modelling, I respond to it. If they say, oh, you should come visit, blank. And that's just how I deal with it. Now, everybody is different. You will want to deal with it in a different way for your mental health to the way I want to deal with it for my mental health. But my way of dealing with it is just not to engage. The only person I can really control is myself, so I just don't engage with them. If it's really, like if it's porn or something really bad, I'll block it, delete it. If it's spam, I'll block it, delete it. The rest of it, just ignore. Shergel, officially I'm 56 and young at heart. But Lily, sorry, yeah. But you do what works for you for your mental health because you are a different generation to me. And you are also in a different place to me. Everybody has to do what's right for them. But just, I sometimes think I could have burnt a lot of bridges over the years being difficult with people because they've said something I'd misinterpreted. So the only thing I'd say is just be careful about whether you're interpreting. People genuinely on my page don't want to be difficult. YouTube's different, but on my Discord, on these other things, they're normally telling me, even if I know already what they're telling me, they're generally telling me because they want to help, and I accept that. Shergel says, officially I'm 56 and young at heart. Yeah, you're only a little bit older than you, because I'm actually twice your age, Lily. I'm 52, so I am definitely a different generation. Shergel, at my workplace we have assume good intent posters on the wall. I think it's a really good phrase. Yeah, you have to assume the best. Lily, by the way, Kathy, would you consider a segment for showing off screenshots of whip stuff from the Discord server? My Thingiverse uploads usually hardly get any traction. I don't really get much whip stuff from the Discord. It's not a highly trafficked site. So put it on the Discord and I'll happily point people to my Discord. Hopefully one of the mods will put a link on there so you can go check it out. The whip stuff's generally in whip. When Fidget's products are in showcase, it's 2 channels I've got for members, but actually people can post in anything general or whatever. And I think, but I don't really have much stuff on there. It's quite a quiet Discord server. The print testing's busy at the moment because loads of people are print testing, but otherwise it's generally quite quiet, I'm afraid. So please go on there and chat, folks, because then I would have stuff to put up. Brewski says, who was a communications officer, a lieutenant? The fact they dressed all the women on the show in impractical outfits has been a cinema staple to this day. I'll shut up now. No, did you see when they did Trouble with Tribbles from Deep Space Nine and they went back? It was fascinating how modern women look very different to 60s, I think it was, 60s women, maybe it was 70s, in the same outfits. The women are all taller and less nipped in at the waist nowadays, and they looked really weird in it by comparison. Ripley taking off her clothes, says Shergirl, to get ready for cryo was to make her demonstrate she thought the danger was past. Yeah. She could have had a full bodysuit on though. She didn't have to be utterly naked. Well, I mean, she wasn't utterly naked, she had knickers on, but you know. Lily says, Section 31 was utter muck, I heard, even from the reputable reviewers. Yeah, that's what I've heard, sadly. Shergirl says she only had Jonesy to talk to at that point. Yeah, but come on. She must have seen the cameras behind her. Lily says, I know I must seem a bit obsessed and I figure my slight dash of autism is hyper-focusing on it. But I dare say if you know how I'm treated on the street and have been in the hobby, you'd see why. Yeah, and everyone has their different views and comes from different places. So you have to do what's right for you, Lily. Doug says, I met my wife at a games club, RPG, board games, etc. There's a higher percentage of ladies now, but still massively disproportionate form. Far more men than women. Yeah, I agree with that, Doug, from my experiences in the hobby. Digger, wow, some people have no idea about boundaries, manners or decency. No, they really don't. Lily, why waste all my time? I've never been able to do that. My temper is ginger levels of intense and not clapping back feels like capitulation. Yeah, I think it's just different coping strategies, Lily. But, you know, Doug says it's always been true, Digger. Some people have, I think the difference is it's harder to come up and be rude to people, but I have had people walk up, go, hate the mini catties, and walk off. I stopped doing them not long afterwards, after that comment. But, you know, so people will walk up to you and be rude to your face. But yeah, as Doug and Digger say, there's always been people who have no ideas about what actual polite conversation looks like. So Brewski says, I always try and to apply my thoughts as suggestions, as I think that many solutions that can be applied to achieve a result. And that's what I'm finding with the, say, the aquarium sort of stuff at the moment. I don't know what the correct solution is. And I'm not posting anything online as a result because I don't actually want the criticism, and it's not a major part of my life to go on social media. And I put as little as possible on social media, really. But if someone asks me about static grass, I have a real opinion about the best ways to do it. But it depends what you're modelling. You know, yeah. If you're modelling short grass, you're going to want to do a different technique to if you're modelling long grass. And I think there's a lot of things, you know, my answer to everything with modelling is, well, go back and look at the real thing. And what does that look like? Oh, thanks for putting up the Discord channel, Timber. Doug, I almost saw a fight break out whilst waiting in a car park for a shop to open. I was walking round to my mum's. Bear in mind, I live in a very quiet upmarket, well, middle class, residential road. And two guys got into it at the bottom of the road. I don't know what had happened. One guy said the other kicked his cat or his dog or something. And so they came to punches, and all the neighbouring men, all of whom were called David, I think, almost every man on our street's called David, all went out to sort of sort out what was happening. It was very bizarre. So yeah, you can have fights anywhere. It was like two punches landed and a bit of a ripped t-shirt, I think. I don't think there's many slides left, so let me, yep, that was it. Let me go back to full-size me. There we go. Ooh, it's gone dark outside. So that was what I wanted to say on being new at things. It can be really, really hard to be new. I'm used to being an expert at modelling. So I came into aquariums and went, oh, I'm new. I don't really know. And I'm loving learning it. Obviously, what I want to do far exceeds my abilities, which is why I ended up starting with something very basic. I went into the shop. If you go into Aquarium Gardens in Huntingdon, they've got a little section with sand, sort of black sand down, which is like the aquasoil you use. And they'll partition up the same size as your aquarium. And then you can go and take the hardscape, otherwise known as stone and wood, and arrange it there, knowing it will fit. and then you can buy only what you need and take it home. And then they went through and said, oh, well, that plant won't really work. We haven't got that one. They hadn't got one, so they got me a couple of cuttings of one that I wanted that was spilling out of theirs that looked really good. So, you know, I found them to be excellent, and they were really, really good shops. So I can't recommend them enough, really. Aquarium Gardens in Huntingdon, and it's actually halfway down to my dad's, which I go to every summer many times. And I go probably to my dad's about 7 times a year, so I'm going to be driving past them quite a bit. And they were really, really genuinely nice. We went there on the way down to dad's, and then we bought everything on the way back. And it was really great, and it was lovely to chat to people. And he was like, wait 3 weeks before you put fish in. So when I go to the fish shop and they say, oh no, you can put them in a week, I'm like, I'm going to follow the guy from Aquarium Gardens, because that's what the website, the soil he sold me also said. So I'm just going to follow that. And I do think sometimes you just have to find the right expert. And the biggest problem I found in the aquarium world is there's a lot of experts. I listened to one and thought, oh, I don't like him. Listen to someone else and they're like, oh, I do a fish in cycle. And someone else, oh, fishless cycling's the best. And after a while, you're just confused. And that is the problem with the internet too much now. I'm just confused. You know, if I was starting again, I wouldn't know what to do, because there's just too many options now. Whereas back in the day, you know, the height of, you know, advancement was Targrout. You know, I got that off a forum 20 plus years ago. So yeah. Doug, I almost saw a fight break out, he said, and then it says, a black guy rode up on an amazing chopper and a skinhead stated how nice it was. The biker assumed it was an insult. Oh. My wife told me off for getting involved and trying to calm everyone down. Oh dear. Did you succeed though, Doug? Do tell us. Yeah, I sometimes think it's so easy to assume, because of previous experience in similar situations, that it's going to be the same. So Timber says, our local aquarium sells piranha. I saw some at the Lakeside Aquarium. They have scary looking, I don't think they'll strip you bare necessarily like they did in the movies. The 70s movies when I was a kid were all about piranha eating people. But I would not want to bite my finger. I suspect you could lose a finger. Norm says, I'm my own worst critic, so I don't even listen to others. They're not as good at me as criticism. I am with you, Norm, there. You know, no matter what anybody says about one of my models, I will already have thought it. You know, if someone tears it to shreds, which they don't, you know, people are polite enough, they don't do that to me. But even if, you know, they write something's wrong, I normally know it's wrong. Every now and then, I hadn't realised, like, oops, I actually put the doors on backwards on the Lati, which is it's actually on the trailer at the start, it's the Clone Wars gunship. I hadn't noticed. I'd taken them on and off so many times, I'd obviously put them back on wrong. They're now on right. But yeah, that's what I talk about, my perfectionism. I'm more likely to be critical of my work than other people. But what I find, I don't normally feel like this, about 4 or 5 years later when I look back on it and I've forgotten what I was upset about it all, I actually think they're not as bad as when I did them. I tend to finish everything and think that sucks, that's awful, that's crap, I don't like that, and to see all the flaws. And then, yeah, years later when I've forgotten what they all were, I'm like, oh, it's not too bad. Doug says, is that a challenge, Norm? We are not going to start insulting everybody to see how good everybody is at coping. David Holmes says, I discovered your channel in a new inexperienced modeler looking for inspiration and practical ideas. Box ticked, thank you. Good, I'm glad I could support people, because that's what it's about. Doug says, yes, no punches thrown, everyone escaped unscathed and without hard feelings. That's really good, well done. Well done for stepping in there. Kero Siding says, my phrase from Star Wars is do or do not, there is no try. I think that's a fascinating one and it is a very Yoda thing to say. And it's like, sometimes you try and you fail. So, yeah. But I understand why the phrase comes from. I actually think it's a very interesting phrase, because sometimes people do try and they don't succeed. I've had techniques like that where I've tried something and it hasn't succeeded. And I did it And then somehow it was not. Yeah. Wow. So, too old, said Yoda, looking at a baby. Yes. Oh, Grogu is quite old. I don't really get why you'd want a baby that's, you know, still a toddler at 50. But he does look cute, and he has sold an awful lot of Star Wars. I'm looking forward to Maul's Shadow Lord. Maul's one of my favourite characters, partly because he has got a great arc. I think my two favourite characters morphed from Captain Rex and Ahsoka. Ahsoka kind of went out when I saw the Ahsoka series, and I was like, what have you done to her? But then recently it's been Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Legends stuff about him over the canon stuff, and then the sort of Maul, because both of them have got complete lifetime arcs that are, you know, quite interesting for me. Anyway, so anyway, for those of you who are into Star Wars, Darth Maul's the black and red dude who got cut in half at the beginning of The Phantom Menace, then got resurrected by George Lucas in Clone Wars, then appeared again in Rebels, then has been as a little cameo in Solo, and basically is just an awesome evil dude. He's not as evil as the Sith anymore, but he's just full of vengeance. And Kenobi, as he kind of runs down trying to kill him again, and basically kills everybody he can find that might upset Obi-Wan Kenobi, because he holds a grudge. He held himself together on hate for like 13 years on a trash heap planet, because he's obviously American. So he does sound very British. And the guy who does the voice acting for him is really good at it, Sam Witwer. So I'm looking forward to his. But then it seems a bit like Star Wars is having a bit of a hiatus on bringing out loads of stuff, I think, because they've decided that they're going to do maybe quality over quantity. So we'll see what happens with Star Wars, which is a shame. And the only reason I get very excited about whether Star Wars is doing well or not is A, will I get more content, or B, will my Star Wars styled, inspired by Kickstarters do well or not? Because there we go. Doug says, practice, practice, practice needs you to try and be willing to move on from failure. The binary solution of there is no try is too black and white. I think so. And obviously my very first slide on how do I learn is practice. If I don't do it a lot, I find I lose the motor skills. So yeah. Jeffrey, hi again folks. Did I miss the explanation why that room looks so tidy? What, my room looks tidy? Because it's all sat out in the hallway and in the kitchen waiting for me to tidy it. I moved the table around. I did explain that at the beginning. So the table used to be this way around and the windows over here, and the screens were like this, and I couldn't really see out. And you came in and you sat down almost straight away, and the rest of the room was just blocked. And I wanted to look at my plants over here, which were on big plant stands, but I couldn't really, they were all on the floor, so I couldn't see them. So now I sit and face the wall, which has the least amount of stuff on it. There's a radiator and one picture up high that I can still see. And all this stuff is behind me, admittedly, but I can now look out the garden, which is, you know, beautiful, my garden. I spent a lot of time gardening it. And I thought this would be really good to, and actually it feels massive in here now. It feels like there's a lot more room because A, I've lost one leaf of the table. It's now completely folded up, so it's probably only a 3-foot desk in every direction. No home for the printer yet. I need to get a low, well, I can afford it, a low something to put the plants a bit higher and to put the printer in so it's not in the sunlight over here. So at the moment it's just on the floor, but it's still actually out in the hallway. But my hallway is full of stuff and my kitchen is full of stuff, and I had just tidied the kitchen to clean, so everything just keeps moving around. I had a friend come stay, a friend Lucy, so all the stuff that was in that room that meant she couldn't get to the bed is now in Scut City, so Scut City's on hold whilst she's coming back in September for her birthday. Oh, I just feel like I move stuff back and forth. And this lot all needs a big dust because it's still got builder's dust on it. And the black shelving is, dare I say it, practically white on top. But there we go. So Norm said no, actually, presumably explaining, and says, I like this view. I think it's a good view, actually. I thought, well, I moved it without thinking what was going to happen. So yeah, there's the uninteresting fireplace with my kind of horses. So we've got Ride Went the Wind, Bullseye. One I picked up in the pier. One I picked up in South Africa that when that fell off the wall, smashed that, but put back together. And that's a Tang Dynasty, also from Pier, which was a homewares shop, which I used to buy stuff to finish my home. And then all the rest of this stuff is either inherited from family or models, like my Machine and Krieger's just up there, and you probably can't really see it, or from my travels, because I love buying tat. So there we go. It does look more spacious, says Doug. It does, doesn't it? It feels more spacious. Massively more spacious. And I've actually got the window curtains pulled back so I can actually see out. The voile was over them to stop the sun getting onto my stuff down here. So I just might need to look at that. But it does definitely look better. And JJ says like a gallery. Jeffrey, so you're stuck in there then? No, I can get out. I just have to very carefully when walking around, sadly. And then the kitchen, I was halfway through sorting out all my old paperwork, and I need to go and get a shredding bag from the local business people. And there's a business equipment shop here that does shredding for you, because I've got about this much stuff I'm throwing out, and I'm just going through the big piles. I'm not a filer. I just pile in boxes, and every couple of years throw the bottom of the box out because it's out of date, and just keep the important stuff in a separate file that I don't throw out. I hate filing. I hate tidying, to be honest. I'm not a tidy person. But I would like to go through and sort all of these and perhaps move some of them around so that the ones that are more visible are my favourite ones. And I've got some upstairs that can come down and some here. These are like my earlier ones. And then I've got my display room upstairs that's got my later ones. So there we go. So 5 minutes to go. And Brewski says, dinner time, wife is calling. Thanks, Kathy. Well, bye. Have fun. And enjoy your dinner. So with 5 minutes, normally we talk about sci-fi. I actually did watch, we got up to Colin Baker in our Doctor Who watch before Mum got bored and we stopped. She doesn't really like Colin Baker that much. And we did watch a couple of the new one, but she's still not a fan of the new one. So we're still only on the second season. So there we go. That's what I've been watching. Strange New Worlds I'm looking forward to, but they've got a few more to go. Second season on Wednesday coming out. Loads of things planned. But actually the one I'm really looking forward to, and I got this great book which is upstairs somewhere, is The Alien Earth, that is due out 13th. So what day is that? Wednesday. So Alien Earth, double episode opener on Disney Plus, I think, for Alien Earth, which is a prequel, but not the prequel. So I was debating about rewatching all the Alien movies afterwards. And I bought, because someone had showed it online with £5 off, I bought Alien Blueprints book, and it's really good. You can get it on Amazon, it's about 20 quid. And it's Aliens Ships Blueprints. It's a really, really good book. So there we go. Huh. Doug, oh, it's time for Doctor Who again. Oh yeah, it's always time for Doctor Who. And then Norm says, Foundation, in my humble opinion, is the best sci-fi on TV currently. I haven't seen it because I think it's Apple. Of all the streaming services I have, yeah, I haven't watched Apple yet. I just can't be bothered. We actually own about 3 between Mum and myself, and Sky as well. So yeah, Mum has Sky. So yeah, if it ever comes out somewhere else, I'll watch it. Doug says, the day before Second Dynasty's Frontier. Actually, Doug, thank you for reminding me. So with my last couple of minutes of breath before this finishes, hopefully I'll carry on breathing afterwards, I would definitely recommend checking out the pinned link to My Mini Factory's Frontier. It's called Cocytus Station. I think it would work really well as a space station. It's supposed to be a colony sort of outpost, but it would work really well as a space station as well if that's what you want. And it will sync really nicely with my next Kickstarter because I'm using the same system. The only difference is I'm modelling 35mm, so actually I've got sort of two heights for everything. So I've got a 28mm height desk and a 35mm height desk, which isn't that much extra modelling. It's mostly just shunting it up and down at the bottom and maybe spacing things out slightly differently. But I've got it so that you can have two different sizes of scale, depending whether you want to do 28 or 35. And you can just add the tops on. Whereas, obviously, Ben's is all just 28mm. So, there we go. David says, watched Three Body Problem on Netflix and had to buy the books to try and work out what it was all about. That's funny. Yeah, I sometimes feel that, especially if I'm trying to do something else at the same time, like my Star Wars crosswords. And then you look up and realise you've no idea who did it, and you've just watched something for an hour that you should actually know who just murdered someone in it. Anyway, so I hope people found that useful. Obviously, you know, everybody has their own way with dealing with criticism on the internet. And if you're new, you may get it. My best advice is don't take it to heart. You know, the internet can be very savage. It can also be really good, but don't take it to heart. You know, your modelling is good. Find people you trust to give you advice on it. And people will tell you, honestly, whether it's good or bad. And if you don't know who to come to, ask me, and I'll always find something good, because there is always something good in people's modelling. There we go. So guys, thank you very much, and good night. Norm saying good night. Thanks guys. Doug's trying to start an argument about 28mm being the better scale. I don't disagree, but all my models are 35mm, so sorry Doug. And Digger says this was a great stream. Well, thank you again to Digger, Norm and Timber, who are my moderators, and Doug, who finishes on the #1 crown. I'll stop it now so he remains at the top. Bye folks.